Well, hi,
Well, hi,
I,
and Happy New Year.
and Happy New Year. I'm Pam,
And I'm Demi.
and we're
Two
two
librarians.
librarians
The library's open.
for 2021.
That's right. We all hope y'all had a safe and happy new year.
We're happy to be back with y'all.
And there's a very special book that we want to share with you today. And we're only going to share a little bit of it just because of time sensitivity. But we encourage y'all to read the whole book and do some research on this very special, important man.
Pam bought this incredible book, but Pam didn't realize it was incredibly long.
That's right. And it's called The Story of Martin Luther King Jr. and
A biography book for new readers by Christine Platt.
That's right. And it is illustrated by Steffi Walthall, and it is Rockridge Press.
Walthall.
Sorry.
Okay, so we're going to read you some nice highlights to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. weekend.
That's right.
Here we go.
And this is chapter 6. Martin has a dream.
Okay. Marching on Washington, D.C. Martin knew he had support in Washington. John F. Kennedy, the man who'd helped him get him released from jail, was now the President of the United States. President Kennedy also believed in equality. On June 11th, 1963, Martin Luther King gave a powerful speech about violence that happened in Birmingham, Alabama a few months before. President Kennedy encouraged all citizens to work together to bring about change. On June 19th, President Kennedy introduced a new civil rights bill to Congress. If passed, the law would end segregation in public places like schools and restaurants forever. Martin's efforts to promote this bill would lead to his most famous speech. Segregation's a big word, and that means they separated people based on their skin color.
That's right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. There's a hair.
Okay. You can read by here.
Martin worked with other leaders to plan an event called the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Many people helped plan the march, but Martin worked closely with 5 other leaders. Together, they were called the Big Six. MLK Chairman, SCLC, John Lewis, President, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, A. Philip Randolph, Labor Union Organizer, Roy Wilkins, Executive Director, NAACP, James Farmer, founder of CORE, Whitney Young, Executive Director, National Urban League.
On June 22nd, 1963, the Big Six met with President Kennedy to discuss their plans. They promised the event would be non-violent. Important word.
Very important.
Non-violent. President Kennedy gave his support, and the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was scheduled for August 28, 1963. It ought to be possible for every American to enjoy the privileges of being American without regard to his race or his color. That was what President Kennedy said. Over 250,000 people came in support of the March on Washington. Around 80,000 of these supporters were white people. Strangers linked arms as they marched and sang together. It was the largest showing of racial unity America had ever seen at that time.
Wow. We need more of that.
We sure do.
Jump in the think tank. How might today's world be different if MLK and his thousands of followers hadn't marched on Washington in support of civil rights?
It's a good question.
That is a great question. After several people gave performances and speeches, Martin addressed the audience. He shared with them his dreams for America. Martin's I Have a Dream speech is one of the most quoted speeches in the world. The March on Washington ended as the crowd sang the anthem of the Civil Rights Movement, "We Shall Overcome." The time for change had come.
One day, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. That was a part of Martin's speech. Change for America. Sadly, President Kennedy died before seeing the rewards of his work. When he was assassinated on November 22nd, 1963, the nation mourned. On July 2nd, 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson
signed the Civil Rights Bill of 1964, honoring President Kennedy. After the tireless work of many civil rights leaders and their supporters, segregation had ended in the United States. Martin was proud and thankful. On October 14, 1964, Martin was awarded the prestigious Nobel Peace Prize. At 35 years old, he is among the youngest people to ever win the prize, but Martin's work wasn't finished just yet. There was still a lot more he wanted to do for himself and the nation. When? The March on Washington takes place in August 1963. JFK was assassinated November 1963. The Civil Rights Bill of 1964 is passed in July, and MLK receives Nobel Peace Prize in October of 1964.
And there is so much more that Martin accomplished in his life, his short-lived life. He sadly passed away because he was assassinated. Chapter 7, marching from Selma to Montgomery. So we're going to go over what happened afterwards.
After the Civil Rights Act of '64 was passed, people expected things to get better right away, but they didn't. Some cities chose to close schools rather than desegregate them. Other cities had unfair rules that made it hard for black citizens to register to vote.
One of those cities was Selma, Alabama. On March 7, 1965, several civil rights activists tried to peacefully march from Selma to Montgomery to protest unfair voting rules. This is important. We just saw that. They were met with violence from state troopers. The march and violence were broadcast on television. It was so bad that the day became known as Bloody Sunday. People were very upset, including Martin. On March 21st, he led a second round from Selma to Montgomery. This time, the peaceful protesters had protection from the Alabama National Guard. There was no violence. The 54-mile march took 5 days. Martin began with a small crowd of supporters, but by the time they reached Montgomery, the crowd had grown to 25,000 people. Martin was excited that so many
people supported equal voting rights. The march made a big impact on President Lyndon Johnson. On August 6, he signed the Voting Rights Act of '65, which ended unfair rules that made it hard for black citizens to vote. It was a historic moment for Martin and the country. A tragic goodbye. Martin achieved many of his goals for equality, but rather than rest, Martin continued to speak on when he saw injustice. Martin protested war and poverty and fought for equal rights.
Justice is love, correcting that which revolts against love. Coretta and their children continued to support his important work. In April 1968, Martin went to Memphis, Tennessee, to help black sanitation workers. They were protesting to be paid the same as white workers.
Well, that makes sense.
Sadly, it was the last time. It would be Martin's last protest. On April 4th, 1968, Martin's life ended when he was assassinated standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. The man who killed him, James Earl Ray, was a racist who did not believe in equality. After the assassination, James Earl Ray went on the run. He was finally captured on July 19, 1968. He pleaded guilty to Martin's murder and was sentenced to 99 years in prison.
It's a long time.
It sure is. Thank goodness.
Throughout the world, people were saddened by Martin's tragic death. Thousands went to his funeral in Atlanta. A few days later, President Johnson honored Martin by signing the Civil Rights Act of 1968. This law fulfilled one of Martin's last goals for equal housing rights. If people wanted to rent or buy property, it was illegal to discriminate against them because of their race, religion, or nationality. Even though Martin's life ended, people continued to support his dream, especially Coretta. In 1968, she created the King Center in Atlanta. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people visit to honor Martin's legacy. Martin is forever remembered as one of the world's greatest civil rights leaders. In 1977, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and in 2004, a Congressional Gold Medal. Today, people from all over the world travel to Washington, D.C. to visit the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. Isn't it pretty? We thank you so much for coming and spending a little time with us and hope you enjoy your MLK weekend.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode to learn a little tidbit about the wonderful impact that Martin Luther King Jr. had on our country and the world.
That's right.
We'd like to remind you to please save with stories and to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Pam.
I'm Tammy.
And we're
Two librarians. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.